Hello students, today we will be studying process of controlling. Now all of us have learnt about controlling. What is controlling? Controlling is a process, we have learnt. Process of bringing actual results and desired results closer together. So what is that process that brings actual and desired results closer together in the organization? For that, following steps have to be followed, 5 steps, and these steps have to be followed in sequence. Because if it is a process, process means procedure, and procedure means series of steps which has to be taken, and these steps for bringing actual results closer to the desired results in the organization is the process of controlling. So let us learn about this process. Now, the first step in this process of controlling is setting performance standards. In an organization, always before the work begins, there is standards set. What is this standard? Standard is the criterion. This is the definition which I am writing, or you may say the benchmark against which actual performance is measured. So we have learned in an organization there is always standard which is set to be achieved, and that standard is achieved with the help of the resources which is available in the organization in the form of human resources, material resources, financial resources, and also equipments, that is the physical resources. So it makes possible to achieve the required standard which the organization sets in the form of organizational goals. So standards of the organization may be in the form of organizational goals or targets which every organization wants to achieve. And on the basis of that set organizational goal, we see that the departments set their goals, and the individuals, they also are assigned different roles to meet up those standards, so that in coordination of the efforts which is made at individual level, at departmental level, at different levels working in the organization, we see that the organization is able to achieve the required standard. So whenever this performance standard is to be set in the organization, there has to be few things which has to be kept in mind. What are those few things? The first and foremost, I am writing the keywords here. The first and the foremost thing which has to be kept in mind while setting standard is that standard should always be set in simple, clear, and measurable terms. First thing, standards can be set, second thing, quantitatively or qualitatively. Quantitative standards, that means standards which can be expressed in numerical terms. It may be example of quantitative standard may be number of units produced, sold units sold, sales volume, these are all quantitative standards, because the standard has been set in terms of certain numerical figures. But not all the standards in the organization of each and every activity can be set quantitatively. Therefore, sometimes there is need to set qualitative standards. For example, if an organization has to set the standard for motivation, morale, employee satisfaction, if it wants to measure all these things, then it cannot be set in quantitative terms. It has to be set qualitatively. Whether it is set quantitatively or qualitatively, always it has to be kept in mind that the standard should be set in such a manner that it is simple, it is clear, and it is measurable. How it will be measured, it should be clear. And the third aspect which has to be kept in mind is that the standards set should be of flexible nature. Flexible, why? Because it can adapt to changes in environment, whether internal environment or external environment. If the standards are set in such a manner that it is flexible, then it is possible for the organization to adapt to the changes, and changes, we all know, that may take any time in the organization. If there is flexibility in terms of standards set, then there is always a possibility to quickly adapt to those changes and adjust according to it, so that the organization doesn't suffer. So in case of performance standard, these 3 points has to be kept in mind. Standard should be simple, clear, and measurable. It can be either quantitative or qualitative, and it has to be flexible so that it can adapt to the changes. Now, after the performance standard is set, there is measurement of the actual performance. Now, for measuring the actual performance also, there are certain things which have to be kept in mind. That while measuring the actual performance, measurement should always be done, first of all, in objective and reliable manner. Then only the measurement will be correct, free from all bias and prejudices, and always in a logical and rational manner. That is objective and reliable manner. Second thing, measurement should always be done in the same unit in which standard has been set. If it is set in quantitative terms, it should be measured in quantitative terms. If it is set in qualitative terms, it should be set in qualitative terms. What is the unit? If it is in, you may say kg, then it has to be measured in kg, set in kg, so measured in kg. If it is set in feet, meter, or any other unit, it has to be measured in the same unit. Then third thing which has to be kept in mind is that measurement should take place from time to time. During the progress of work, it is not one-time measurement. If the target has been set to be achieved for say within a period of 5 months or 6 months, then time to time the measurement should take place about the work in progress. That is what is regular monitoring of the work. Also, fourth point, there are various techniques of measurement which can be applied. Sometimes it is observation method, sometimes performance appraisal report can help in measurement, sometimes there is sample checking. So always it depends upon the nature of work. On the basis of the nature of work, the decision is taken about which technique will be used for measurement of actual performance. There are so many, you may say, activities which is carried out in the organization which can be measured on the basis of personal observation. There are some activities which has to be measured on the basis of progress report or performance appraisal report, and that report may also be of on individual basis or on organizational basis or on departmental basis. For example, when we talk about if an individual assessment is to be done, individual's performance has to be measured. And how can it be measured? That can be measured only by the superior of that individual and prepare a performance report about his performance. If the organization's performance is to be measured, then there are various ways. It can be by different types of ratio analysis which the organization prepares from time to time: gross profit ratio, net profit ratio, return on investment. These things, it helps to measure the performance of the organization and the report can be prepared. If an organization wants to measure the performance of different departments, for example, production department, then it can measure its performance on the basis of number of units produced, number of defective products which is being produced. If it wants to prepare a performance report of, you may say, marketing department in an organization, then on the basis of number of units sold, it can prepare the report. So there can be different ways through which the assessment or the measurement of the actual performance can be done. It can be done at individual basis, it can be done at departmental basis, it can also be done for the entire organization, and for which the report is prepared so that a record can be maintained. Also, we see that whenever the measurement of the performance qualitatively is to be done of any product, then the quality can be assessed on the basis of sample checking. Sample checking is also one of the technique. A sample can be taken and out of that sample it can be understood what is the quality of the product, especially if the product is being produced in large quantity. But if the product is being produced in small quantities, then each and every product can be checked. Its quality can be individually checked. So it depends entirely upon the nature of work and on the basis of which the performance is measured. But these things have to be kept in mind, that measurement should always be objective and reliable. It should be in the same unit. Measurement should take place from time to time, and there can be various techniques which can be used in measurement. Remember it in points so that it becomes easy for you to explain also. And through flow charts in the exams, if it is 6 marks question, flow chart can be made and you can simply write the answers, and it becomes very clear. Each and every aspect will be there. Now third point, comparison of actual. After the measurement of actual performance, there is need to compare actual performance with the standard performance. Why there is comparison of actual performance with standard performance? Why? To identify deviation. Sometimes this is asked in the 1 mark question also. Why there is need for comparison of actual performance with standard performance in controlling? To identify deviation. Very important. And this deviation can be positive or it can be negative. Positive deviation means whenever the performance is above standard, and negative deviation means performance below standard. So whenever the comparison is done, then only it becomes clear what is the actual performance. Is it above standard or it is below standard? If it is above standard, standard is set for 10 units and the actual performance is 12 units. So it is above standard and it is positive deviation. If the standard is set for 10 and the actual performance is 8, then this is negative standard deviation. So it can be either positive or negative. It has to be, or it can be same. It is same. The optimum standard can also be after 10 is set and the same standard has been achieved. So you have achieved the same standard which you have set. So it can be any situation, but it has to be compared whether the actual performance is more or less than the set standard. After comparison, the fourth step is analyzing deviations. After identifying deviation, there is need to analyze deviations. An analysis of deviation is taken by keeping in mind two things. First is in two ways, you can say. After identification, after identifying the deviation, whether it is positive or negative, there is need to analyze deviations. And deviations are analyzed in two ways. First thing is critical point control, or it is also called key result areas. Analysis is done of two things. And second is MBE, I am writing short form, that is management by exception. Analysis of deviation is done of two things: critical point control first, and second is management by exception. Now critical point control. Now we all know that whenever the performance will be measured and compared with the desired performance, actual performance is compared with the desired performance, there is always a possibility that some deviation will occur. That is not the matter to worry if some deviation occurs. Because in the course of work, there is a possibility that the deviation will occur in work from the actual performance. But all deviations which occur is not a cause of worry. Because deviations may be significant deviations or insignificant deviations. Significant deviations means that deviation which is very important to be checked, to be controlled, because it is going to impact the organization's performance. And that is why this significant deviation, which is considered as important deviation which has to be controlled, is called the critical point. And that is what is called the critical point control or key result areas. So it is not at all that all the deviations which occur is a matter to be concerned about. It is only this significant deviation or the key result area which may impact the success of the organization that has to be checked. And that too, it has to be seen whether this deviation is within or beyond permissible limit, because there is always an expectation that some deviation will occur, and there is a permissible range of deviation which is decided by the organization, that yes, if the organization you may say experiences this much deviation, then it is within the permissible limit, and that is not the cause of worry. Beyond that permissible limit will be something which will be a cause of worry for the organization. It has to be properly checked and controlled, because that is the critical point area or key result area which has to be checked, because it may adversely impact the success of the organization. Insignificant deviations hardly matters. So always critical point control means that point which is critical for the success of any organization. For example, sometimes very important, an organization decides, in an organization it has been decided that deviation if occurs in postal charges or increases postal charges, if increases by 15%, is not a cause of worry, because postal charge is insignificant deviation. But labor cost, if it exceeds above 2%, is significant deviation, and that has to be checked immediately. So 15% increase in postal charges is insignificant deviation. That is why it is not going to impact the organization to that much extent. But labor cost, if it exceeds even beyond 2%, that is a critical area. Labor cost is a critical area, and increase in the labor cost beyond 2% is a significant deviation which has to be immediately checked in the organization, and that is what is called the critical point control. Second way to analyze deviation is management by exception. There is a saying, management by an effort to control everything leads to controlling nothing. So what should be controlled? Management by exception says only exceptions should be checked. That means, because if you are in an effort to keep a watch or keep a strict check on each and every activity which is going on, your effort will lead to controlling nothing, because it is impossible to check each and every activity rigorously. So there is need to check only what? Significant deviations beyond permissible limit is something which is exception, and that should be checked. And the more is the deviation from the permissible limit, the more immediate attention should be paid in that area which is considered as significant. That is why example of MB can be that deviation in labor cost beyond 2% should be brought to the notice of management, and if it reaches to 5% increase in labor cost, then immediate attention should be paid by the management, because it is something which is significant, which is critical to be checked. So deviations, they are analyzed in these two ways. Through critical point control, first of all, controlling critical point which is considered as significant point or significant area, and second is management by exception. That means exceptional matters that should be brought to the attention of the management immediately, so that that matter can be kept under control. So fourth point, after analyzing deviation, there is need to analyze the causes of deviation which has occurred in the organization. This is also very, very important. There can be different causes. Sometimes on causes also question is asked. Why has deviation occurred? That may be due to unrealistic standards sometimes, or defective resources. It may be in the form of raw materials, it may be in the form of material resources, it may be in the form of not proper human resources working in the organization, or defective working environment. If it is not good, that is also the cause of deviation, because the employees may not be in a position to work with commitment if the working environment is not cordial, or there may be structural drawbacks. There may be different reasons, but 2-3 reasons have to be understood. And after analyzing the causes associated with deviations, there is need to take corrective action, because unless and until the causes are analyzed, corrective action cannot be taken. So the final step is taking corrective action. While taking corrective action, it has to be understood first of all that no action is required in case deviation is within permissible limit, even if it is in significant areas or critical areas, because some deviation is bound to occur in the organization in all the areas. But in significant areas, permissible limit that is fixed, beyond that permissible limit, if the deviation occurs, then only there is need for corrective action to be taken. And whenever corrective action is to be taken, always the causes associated with deviations have to be understood, then only corrective action can be taken. For example, if it is defective machinery, then replacement of machinery can be the corrective action. If the cause is obsolete machinery, then change the technology. Defective raw material, then change material. Defective human resource, then there is need for hiring people who are better equipped with the work. Also, there are chances of positive deviation if it takes place. That means actual performance is above the standard performance. That means the standards were not set properly, so there is need to revise standards. So in this way, there can be different ways through which the action can